Welcome everyone to our first part of our IT Masterclass series. We will be starting shortly. Today's session will be part 1, Ransomware 101.
My name is Jason Murphy. I'll be hosting the webinar this morning. So I'll be doing this webinar from sunny Arizona in my hotel room. So if the audio is poor, please just send me a little message in the GoToWebinar letting me know that you need me to speak up or what have you. Just as a little bit of housekeeping, I'll be doing this from my hotel room. So please use the GoToMeeting if you do have any questions. Ask any questions. I want to make this as interactive as possible. This is the first part of our 5-part series of our IT Masterclass. I'll be taking you through the Ransomware 101 this morning. And just to kind of introduce myself, my name is Jason Murphy. I'm the Senior Sales Engineer here at CareWorx. My responsibilities include not only working with our account team, but also working with our marketing and sales teams in terms of driving and educating our customers and the community. So today, let's start off with a little bit of fear, and I think we all need that in today's climate. I think if you put your ear to the ground in the last, I would say the last month or so, ransomware is actually making a comeback. It actually kind of died down. Was pretty quiet for a little while. I think we've all kind of sat back on our laurels to a certain degree, but now it's made its comeback, and we all knew it would. After WannaCry kind of hit the scene, people were like, oh, like I've got my backup, I've got my disaster recovery scenario kind of in place. And it's one of those things that we kind of, everything feels good, right? So we really need to understand what is out there and what is happening. So I always like to start off with, laying the foundation in terms of, what is really happening today, right? I know for anybody who's on this call, and I'm from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, natively. So we've had a number of municipalities within our own province getting attacked by ransomware, right? So it's one of those things that if you're a municipality, you have things like, or any business, you have things like fire, theft, flood insurance, all of those things in terms of any kind of natural disaster, right? But what are we doing for kind of what I would call cyber hygiene when it comes to ransomware, right? So, if we're taking, we'll hire a lawyer for all the legal aspects, or, we'll go to the dentist. Those typical things that we need to do. We're focused on, reaching out to people who know best, except when it comes to IT security. It's one of those things that, yes, there are things like theft, fire, floods that happen, and we do have to prepare for those things, right? That's very, very important. But what are we doing to protect ourselves? So in terms of my Ransomware 101, I really want to kind of start off by what we're doing at CareWorx. So the important part here is we use kind of what I would call a layered security approach to combating ransomware. first and foremost, secure the perimeter, right? What are you using for next generation technology, right? Are you using, your, what I would call pro consumer grade firewall, that's 4 or 5 years old? That's what we need to do to upgrade. We need to protect ourselves from at a perimeter level. Everything comes in through the internet, so we need to make sure that that particular appliance is next gen, is state of the art, right? So as you look through the top of the left hand side, we've got secure the perimeter, secure the web, secure the email, secure the wireless. So that is your network protection side, right? But on the other side, right, and this is really where ransomware is now coming down, is we need to secure the endpoint, right? We need to help our end users, right? And that's where, they're clicking through, the atypical phishing email, where when they're clicking that hyperlink, what is happening is that they're traversing the internet, right? Downloading some kind of program, and there are hundreds of variants of ransomware out there. But the important part is when they're downloading that, it's then installing into their endpoint, right? They're giving it the authentication to do so. So making sure that we're securing the endpoint is very, very important. Next gen endpoint protection. Are you using technologies like, Bitdefender, for example? What are you doing from a mobile perspective? Because they're on their phones, they're at work, they're connected to your wireless. Are they on the same LAN as all of the business operations? I mean, that is a weak point. So what are you doing to secure the mobile? Safeguard encryption. What are you doing to encrypt that endpoint? And also server security. What are we doing to protect our servers? And again, part of the strategy should be, put the onus on someone else to secure that server. As IT transformation is making its way through businesses across the country, it's really important here. I'm just going to take a quick drink. It's really important to note that, are you using things like Office 365, right? Are you using technologies that are typically on premise that could be moved to a cloud service? Something like Sage Accounting, right? And I see this a lot with our customers and the people that I talk to, is that they feel more comfortable when it's in their environment. And I do understand that. However, it is 2018. We do need to modernize and think about security. And if you're putting the onus on the corporation you're doing business with, because a lot of the time they have these cloud services, right? So what we want to do is, take the onus off our environment and really move that technology to the cloud. And there's many, many reasons for cloud adoption, and I won't really go into that today. But I mean, in terms of the ransomware 101, that is a solid strategy, the digital transformation. Okay, so, and again, I do want to reinforce that we are a Datto partner as well. So what we do is we work with Datto very, very closely in terms of coming out with strategies around business continuity. And what I really want to tell you is that people are your greatest risk, right? Your end users, probably even yourselves. Not to put anything, but the important part here is you do not want this to happen to you, right? So we need to really understand and put out technologies that are going to really help us and reinforce that if there is a problem, what can we do, right? Now, and I do want to give you some examples as we go through in terms of what is affected, the landscape today. Obviously, we've got an example in terms of Loblaw, right? So it doesn't matter if you're in the enterprise. It doesn't matter if you're the end user working away. You do not want to have this happen to you. But as kind of an IT 101, we need to protect ourselves. So how do we do that, right? Okay. Now, in terms of the threat landscape, there are a number of actors that are out there today that are infiltrating our systems. You know, for example, there is things like organized crime. There are nation states. We're you know, the end user is getting caught up in the crossfire. But let's not forget that this is financially motivated, right? So, you know, for example, ACOA breach, the ACOA a breach that occurred, you know, they stole nearly 3,000 messages, right? So this is a game to a lot of these hackers and nation states that are out there doing this. But again, your end users need the protection. So what are we doing, right? So, and the thing is, are we testing the email? Are we sending particular emails so that we can test our end users to trick them into clicking so that we can educate them, right? And that's a really important and sound strategy, right? Even the Pentagon has gone through ransomware, right? So, and this is really important. It doesn't matter who you are, right? As they say in ransomware or in IT security, it's a matter of when, not if, right? So it is going to happen. So, and it's really important that we do things around protecting ourselves. Now, I've used this particular example before, is that even at Blackhat, you know, there are conferences, IT security conferences, where a group of hackers will do things like drop off USB keys, right? So they'll leave them on the ground all throughout this conference. And what they'll do is, let me go back, is that somebody will pick up that key, insert it into their laptop, and it will infect them, right? It's a game. Now, we have to rethink how we do things. If ransomware is going to strike, and again, I said when and not if, right? The important part is what happens at that stage, right? We need to start thinking about business continuity, keeping our systems up and running no matter what, right? Now, the important part here is that we can do things like protect the desktop, protect the physical server, even do things like protect our systems, even from cloud only, local only, you know, file-based backups. There's a lots of ways and strategies around protecting ourselves in ransomware. Okay? So when we talk about our product, Data, for example, continuity is a hybrid cloud-based backup, so you're backing it up locally, but also backing it up off-premise as well, right? So the good thing about Data is that we're going to be able to move things off-premise, right? And image-based backup, and that delivers superior RTO and RPO. So let's talk a little bit about what that is. So RTO is recovery time objective, and RPO is recovery point objective, right? So you have to think of things like, when you lose data, how much data do you want to lose? Well, the answer there is maybe a few minutes, maybe an hour. You know, it can't have anything more than an hour's worth of downtime. So those are the considerations, time and point, right? So that's where we can really calculate and strategize on the proper solution. And the good news is that with this solution, with Data, what we're able to do is eliminate downtime. Pardon me. So the good news here, how we do that is we virtualize, right? So what happens is we can take copies of systems so that if they do go down, or that they do get hit with ransomware, right, that we're able to virtualize the system and keep it up and running all of the time, right? Now, there's always the consideration file-based versus image-based, right? And there are pros and cons to each. You know, file-based backups do things like restore files very quickly. However, if the system is hit with ransomware, very, very hard to kind of recover just the file, right? So you have to restore by image, right? So as you can see here, you know, we can take files very quickly and move them over. That's easy, right? Now, images take copies. right? And that's really where, when you get hit with ransomware, you really just want to restore or virtualize that particular system. So what happens when you need to restore a file-based backup? Obviously, that takes time, right? We're into Windows. We're doing things like, moving copies of those files, which do take time. It's a file move, right, from one system to the next to restore. So what happens when you need to store obviously in image-based? Again, just to reinforce that, that's a copy move, right? So we have that full, healthy, good backup of your system where we're able to place it literally back on top. So we can restore that back to its normal self. And again, with our Datto product, what we're able to do is do things like instant virtualization, right? So if you do get hit with ransomware, what we're able to do is we have an appliance called a Datto appliance. And what we're able to do is then use that appliance to then make sure that all of those systems are protected and that we're able to do things like, restore them back to their original selves. But in that disaster recovery scenario, you have to think that if you have 6 servers, for example, that are all hit with ransomware, right? Well, maybe we need to shut those systems down and then restore or at least virtualize those systems so that they're up and running, right? So that we can fix those servers offline. Now, the important part about this is there are benefits of virtualization, right? So we can take those copies and really turn them on so that they're so that it reduces the amount of downtime within the organization. Okay, and again, that will help your recovery time and recovery point objective, right? So that if you are hit with ransomware, right, we can actually take that particular server, for example, shut it down, spin up the virtualized server very, very quickly, right from the Datto appliance, or even, from the cloud. So you can do both. And the good news here is that it is local or cloud, so that in one of those disaster scenarios, that if there is theft, fire, or flood, we are going to be able to do things like virtualize from the cloud, so that it eliminates downtime. So this isn't just around ransomware, which is obviously the topic of conversation today, but it's also about what happens if the organization is hit with ransomware and that we need to spin this up, in the cloud. And that's a really important consideration, right? Because, hey, there are things like power issues or fire or flood, right? Now, the important part here is that, what we're able to do here is that we need to prove that this is going to work, right? In any kind of disaster scenario, right, or disaster recovery scenario, we always want to make sure that we can also restore and prove that it's going to work. The good thing is that with our Datto product, we're able to do things like a proper restore. Every single day, we're able to prove that, okay? Which also gives you peace of mind that you're going to be able to, have a copy in case of anything happening, right? So when ransomware does happen, and it's going to, I always like people to understand is that it may not happen to you today, but it's going to happen at some point, and you have to keep that mindset. It is a mindset. We have to change the culture, right? You may have not been infected in the last 10 years, but there is a situation where you may in the next 2, right? So you need to prepare for those, right? Now, one more thing, and this is really important, okay? Ransomware is costing small and mid-sized businesses around $10 billion a year, okay? And that's a staggering number. And it's a lot of money, right? So it can affect, each individual company, big or small. And right now, it used to be, the ransomware was affecting major businesses, the Coca-Colas, the PepsiCos, the Loblaws, people with chains all over Canada or the US. The difference now is that it's targeting small businesses. It's targeting home users, right? What is happening is that it's these ransomware attacks are a lot more sophisticated, right? So it's one of those things where preventing that is very, very difficult. Thought there was a question. My apologies. So what are we doing, right? So it's one of those things that the impact is so widespread. It's happening across. Again, I gave you the example of the municipalities, and one is in Midland, Ontario, and the other one is Blackhat Beach. Both of them, Wasaga Beach, for example, spent $350,000 of taxpayer money. Either hiring IT consultants, turning off systems, the impact of downtime. So it's one of those things where we have to do something, right? And again, using that layered security approach, protecting the endpoint, protecting the network, is going to give you that kind of protection, right? And when we're talking about the data appliance, I want to kind of give you some metrics, because I don't like to get into kind of pure fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? It's more about really what you can do with this information, right? And that's why I wanted to host this 5-part series along with my colleague Jonathan. But the important part here is that 91% report recent attacks among small and medium-sized clients. 40% experienced 6 or more attacks in the last year, and then 31% report multiple ransomware attacks in a single day among small business clients. Okay? So, and the important part here is that it's so widespread because these spam campaigns or phishing campaigns that these people are doing are hitting hundreds, if not, let's say hundreds of thousands of users, right? And again, if you can infect 100 of those, you're talking about thousands and thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, right, in a single campaign. And they're doing this daily, right, across users all across Canada and the United States. Okay? Less than 1 in 4 ransomware incidents are reported to authorities. Now, there's always the mindset, my data is important. I don't want anybody to know this. I've seen this many, many times. We have to take a step back when we're infected. We have to inform either the local authorities, or obviously if you're an end user and you're just kind of on this webinar for more information, that we have to inform IT, right? And that's really, really important. We do not, in any circumstances, pay ransom, because obviously that just helps the attacker. Now, the important part here is there are situations where you sometimes have, like when you're a municipality and you have mission critical data that is impacted and you have no copies of your backup. That is when you have to, obviously pay your ransom. But again, if things were done correctly, right? If that layered security approach was adhered to, we wouldn't have to. We would have things like a data appliance where we could repair those servers offline so that it's now virtualized, right? Where if you have, a particular, an end user and you click that phishing email and you gave it a username and password because you couldn't tell, and that happened. It's even happened to me, right? In fact, it's funny because I got a few messages when I arrived here in Arizona about me sending out a particular link in Facebook Messenger, and I was really confused. I was on the airplane. However, I did connect my phone to the airplane wireless. However, it did not work, right? So I thought that it did not work. But I'm also now internet connected, right? At least to that particular wireless access point. So between that point, even with the internet going down, something happened, right? Now, and I've had to change my passwords, and so I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. And I've been doing this for 24 years, so it's one of those things where it doesn't matter your sophistication. It's not about how IT savvy you are, right? It's about understanding that, you know what, these attacks are very sophisticated. They're everywhere. Um, you're getting faked into clicking in what you think is legitimate email, but it's actually just going to another particular website, unfortunately. So less than 1 in 4 ransomware incidents are reported to the authorities. And a lot of the time, they are now paying those ransoms, right? And roughly around, I've seen anywhere from $300 Canadian to $2,000. It really depends on the price at this point and a few other factors. But 42% of 42% actually paid the ransom. Isn't that a staggering number? Nearly half of all the people infected, based on this poll, have paid the ransom. So obviously, very lucrative industry. Okay. 1 in 4 who did never recovered their data. So just understand that even if you do pay the ransom, you're not necessarily going to get that information back. Now, I do have a question. I just want to read it here. Okay. So, good point. What if the adversary inside the perimeter is inside the perimeter and wants to infect the network from inside? Often we lock out bad guys and inform the people about phishing, but the threat is often from our insiders. You know what? Awesome point. You know what? And that is a major consideration as well, right? So, yes, you have perimeter security. You're blocking. You've got good cyber hygiene from outside in, from what we call the WAN, right? The wide area network, the internet, right, into your organization. But there's another consideration, and that is your end user, right? So what happens if they are bringing things into the environment? What happens if they plug in that USB key, right? What happens if there's many CD-ROM, DVD, there's many ways of getting outside information into the organization. So you have to have a lot of intelligence around protecting your end users even from themselves, right? Because oftentimes they don't know what's on that USB stick, right? So it's a really important consideration so that you're locking down. There are security strategies around locking down end users in terms of permissions. However, we use, at least our CareWorx and our CareWorx customers, we use a particular endpoint security that is locks down USB and actually does a scan, so that before it even plugs in, runs the scan, and then if no threats are found, will then allow the USB to do as a tag. I just want to answer one more question. With a very mobile workforce, your cloud infrastructure, we take the approach to focus on endpoint security, your cloud provider security plan. We don't tell our endpoints to trust our local network anymore, kind of public access. We don't invest in network protection beyond most states. This approach an effective transfer of responsibility to those cloud providers. And yeah, I mean, maybe you came in a little bit late, and thanks for the question. It's one of those things where you do want to transfer as much responsibility from any business to anyone else, and that's a really sound strategy, right? Is that when you have applications or resources that you need to access, keeping them within a data center or keeping them within your office, that was how we used to do it, right? You really need to also have a cloud adoption strategy. And it's important because what happens is that, one, you're trying to keep as much uptime as possible so that yourself and your employees are as productive as possible. Because a lot of these cloud providers will keep what we call 5 nines of uptime, 99.999. which kind of reduces the amount of downtime of those systems. But the other consideration is that they're also responsible for the protection of those systems, right? So it's really, really great around transfer of responsibility. So absolutely, that has to be a key consideration. Now, if you're the federal government, for example, that's not possible, right? You're not going to give Amazon or Google or Microsoft complete control over all of your data, right? So when you're the government, it's a little different. However, when you're a municipality and you're responsible for all of the taxpayer information money, and you still have a number of applications that are maybe customized and what have you, at least transfer them to the hybrid cloud, right? So a combination of local and offsite, and then you can do what is called a redundant copy of that data. Exactly how data will work. Now, I know there's another question, but I will come to it just a moment. I just want to kind of carry on some of these points. That 1 in 4 who did never recover the data. So there is no guarantee that there is going to be keys unlocked of that particular ransomware, and that's an important note. Is that people will pay the ransom and just never get their data back. And that's really, really important, is that there is no guarantee. Okay? Now, we know it's running rampant. So, you've got hospitals hit with it. There's a bunch of examples around, who is getting hit. I mean, whether a data breach is happening over Equifax, I mean, we're all reading about IT security at this point, right? And what I hear is from a lot of companies that we're already backing up, we're already doing it. And no, you're not, right? What you're doing is you're maybe using a backup from 5 or 10 years ago because you paid for it then. I can tell you the threat landscape 5 years ago isn't what it is today. Neither should your backup solution be, right? You need a state-of-the-art backup solution. I don't even like calling that a backup solution. It's a business continuity solution because, one, it can block ransomware, but the other part is that in the case of an attack and somebody does get infected, it can actually restore very, very quickly, or even virtually, right? So it's really, really important that this is happening, across Canada, across the U.S., globally. This is infecting everybody. Okay? Now, another example I like to put out is, transit system, right? The particular San Francisco Transit Authority was hit with ransom. So all of their terminals were down, right? So, and this costed millions and millions of dollars. The actual transit system was down for about 3 days, right? You do not, if you're the IT guy responsible for all these systems, you do not want to be that person, right? So you have to, in terms of your own due diligence, make recommendations to your IT people, to your CIO, to your CFO, your CEO. It doesn't matter. Is that you can ask these questions internally, right? You want to do your own due diligence. How am I protected as an end user, right? Now, I will take another question here with me. Okay. So, my apologies if the audio is a little muffled. Again, working from my hotel phone, doing my very best. If you need me to speak up, just obviously raise your hand or send me. So, what I do hear from a lot of companies is that we're just going to restore from our tape backup. Okay, that is one way to do it. Okay. Now, what happens there is that you have to take that system completely offline. You have to restore from a tape. That can take, I would say, anywhere from, at a minimum, 4 hours. So let's just say it's going to take 4 hours. All right. It usually takes anywhere from 9 to 12. Depends on how much data there is. And the problem with tape backup is that you never know what you're going to get, right? In terms of the quality of the data backup, right? Because it's not a kind of bulletproof method. Let's just put it. Whereas with Datto and other solutions, they are exact mirror of. So again, you don't want your network down for a couple days. I mean, that's the takeaway here. Okay? So getting back to the San Francisco Transit Authority, again, they provide 735,000 rides a day, okay, at 2.25 per rider. Again, $3.3 million, and that's a huge and staggering statistic, right? It's an epidemic, and we know this. Okay? So, Trend Micro, for example, a security vendor here in Ottawa, they warn of ransomware all of the time, right? So I'm giving you some examples that I found online here, but it's all about the end user, right? Now, you have to think about lateral movement of ransomware, and this is an important consideration, is that when you get infected, right? Well, you might, unfortunately, have an infected computer. But what about the people around you? What about the servers that you're connected to or can access, right? So it's more than that, right? What that ransomware does is that, it ends up on your system. It reaches out to a server, maybe in China or Russia. And that's how the encryption actually takes place. It encrypts everything with a particular key, but then also does a lateral movement technique, and then wants to infect everything else around you, right? So it's also really, really important to consider state-of-the-art antivirus. And again, our CareWorx and our CareWorx customers all use our Bitdefender product. But again, we are trying to do something about it, right? So in terms of our ransomware 101, kind of understanding the landscape, it's not all doom and gloom. There's solutions to that, right? And that's really why I wanted to put this on, is that everybody reads about ransomware. I think we all know how dangerous the internet is today. But what can we do, right? It's about continuity, right? It's about keeping systems up and running, keeping your business up and running, keeping even your home system up and running day in, day out, right? So you can do things, right? And the data does come with ransomware detection, right? So what it does is that it looks at your system, right? It does a compare, right, of that data, and then it will notify you that ransomware has hit your computer, right? And it will actually indicate the latest clear version of the file to expedite the file restore. So if you've got a server, for example, that has a terabyte of data, right, and you've got a number of files, probably in the thousands, that have been encrypted. I'm probably go far to say it's probably in tens of thousands of encrypted files, but at least the data is going to know which ones are good, so that it can restore. So that even if you are backing up encrypted files, it'll go back in time, and that is the sophistication around this particular product. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about RPO and RTO, right? I kind of glazed over that, right? Recovery point objective, recovery time objective, right? How much data do you want to lose? How much downtime do you want to have? Those are the two considerations when we talk about business continuity, right? Because if you can understand, like I'll talk to business owners, all across U.S. and Canada, and the question is, how much downtime do you want to have? Well, I don't want to have any downtime. Okay. Well, okay. How much data can you afford to lose? Well, I can't afford to lose any data. Well, the important part here is that, if you are infected, there is always going to be at least a little bit of downtime because somebody has to intervene, right? But the important part here is that we try to keep that, and we craft solutions around those two variables. Okay? And I actually use a particular calculator from Datto to calculate how much time, right? And just to kind of go back, how much time and how much data do you want to lose, right? So that's where the recovery point objective. And I can just go through and calculate all of this very, very easily with you, so that if you want me to put a solution in front of you, obviously please contact me. I'll give you my email at the very end of this call. But this is really about kind of education. So I'm not trying to sell you anything. If you don't want to reach out to me, by all means. But I do want to tell you there are great solutions, and because we are a Datto partner, I do like to talk about Datto and its capabilities. Right? I also use Bitdefender. We use Cisco Meraki. There's a lot of great solutions. So if you're looking for perimeter security, latest greatest technologies around wireless, it doesn't matter. There's sophisticated vendors that are go-to for uptime and obviously security. Now we've got a couple minutes left because I do want to give you a little bit of your time, but I do want to obviously kind of ask at this point if there's any other questions that you have. I would love to kind of answer any questions you have at this point. So if you can maybe start jotting some of them down, by all means, ask them now. But again, I just kind of to summarize, this is the management system that we have, right? So protecting the desktops, protecting the laptops, protecting the mobile, physical and virtual servers. Obviously looking to, connectivity, right? Cloud servers, right? And then obviously, doing, backing up things like Google Apps, Office 365, right? So there's a lot of great strategies around protecting yourself, right? Any other questions for me? Oh, we have one. Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. There it is. I just needed to scroll down. Is there a way to ensure the data backup has not been compromised or infected? That's a great question. In fact, it's not even a consideration. And that's how awesome Datto is, right? Because part of Datto is when we're talking about RTO or RPO, that recovery point objective, is that even if the data was corrupt, right? At least we can go back in time. So I'm sorry if I did address this question a little bit earlier, but it's one of those things that we can go back 5, 10, 50, 30. So that's part of the strategy, is that I need to know how far we can go back in time, so that if the data backup is infected, that at least I can restore from a known, it's called last known good. Right? Last known good is when the last point that we had integrity of our data, right? And that's really, really important, so that if you have a system, and this goes, even without ransomware, this goes around, system integrity. If there's problems with systems and applications have problems, we have to go back to when they were working, right? So that's always part of the consideration. And I always, when I try to build out the solution, I always make sure that we have at least bare minimum, 30 days, right, of data to go back on. Now, I just wanted to finish up here. Let me just move this out of the way. Again, my name is Jason Murphy. You can contact me at jason.murphy@careworx.com. I really appreciate you coming to the Ransomware 101 webinar today. We will have another one coming up very, very shortly. Again, because you were part of this webinar, I will, in fact, we will be sending you information on how to reach out to the second. So I really appreciate your time. I will be talking about layered security in our next one. So again, I showed you, some examples, actually in slide 2 of kind of our layered security approach, but I'm actually going to show you how we do it and put it together, right? So I highly encourage you to come to my second webinar on layered security, because that's really where I like to talk. Like, I love layered security and how it comes together and how we can really, through a layered security approach, stop ransomware and stop other threats from happening. Again, thank you so much. Bye-bye.